Today what we're going to do is we're going to cover Topic 1, Parts of an Expression, which will be found in your book in Lesson 7. We're also going to be doing a Nearpod activity as we do this, and then when the code is established, I will give you that code. So what we're going to do is we're going to begin with our Nearpod activity. Now, to help out this time, I'm going to divide myself up into two. Hi, Chris. Hey, how are you doing up on the screen there, Chris? Pretty good there. All right. Hey, why don't you get the Nearpod activity going and get a code for the kids, and I'll be up here on the screen and I'll write it down once you have it. How does that sound? Okay, let's look at the first page of the lesson. Okay, when we look at this activity, it's going to talk about the parts of the expression. And the question they start off with is, how can you describe the parts of an expression? Well, if you look at an expression, okay, there are special words you can use to identify parts of a numerical expression and algebraic expressions. Remember that a fraction bar also means divide. Now, Chris, I noticed that you have this big green rectangle here. What's that for? Well, maybe what I should do is just uncover it then if it's got some advice under it. Ah, that is good advice. We should always figure out what our expression is talking about. So the very first thing you do when you see an expression such as this is take a look at it. Try and figure out what you're dealing with. In this situation, you can see that you have 12r plus r2, r divided by 2, and then subtraction of 19. So you can see that we have some numbers, some variables, some operations in there. Okay, so right now you might even be thinking about order of operations. Now, kids, let's take a look at Nearpod activity number 1. Before you do anything with an expression, what should you do first? Give them some time to answer the question by pausing the video. Well, before you do anything with an expression, you want to look it over and figure out what it all means. Like up here at this video, you know that you have a couple things going on here and that you're going to have to use order of operations before you can evaluate it. Okay, let's take them to the next screen, Mr. Triola. I won't call you by your first name anymore. Hey, Mr. Triola, I want to help out also. Well, of course you can help out, Brenna. You did a great job at the band competition this weekend, so certainly you can help out here. Each part of an expression that is separated by a plus or a minus sign is called a term. Well done, Brenna. That's right. What we're talking about in this situation is we are talking about the parts of this expression being divided up into the terms. Now, the terms are always going to be separated by either a minus symbol or a plus symbol. So down here we have a plus symbol and we have a minus symbol, which means that we have 3 terms. And the terms are going to be right here, 12 times r, and right here, 1r divided by 2, and 19. Now, 19 is just an amount by itself, but it's still considered a term. Okay? So in this situation, this expression has 3 terms. The terms are 12r, r divided by 2, and 19. Well, let's go on to the next slide. Wait, Mr. Triola, we have a Nearpod activity. Oh, you're right. We better get on that. I'll uncover it for everybody. What would you do first if you evaluated this expression? Don't forget to pause the video. Okay, in this expression, first you would multiply 12 times r because it comes ahead of anything else and there are no parentheses. Very good. Okay, I'll take them to the next slide. Here we go. A coefficient. Now, we've used this term already, and in this situation, a coefficient is a number that is multiplied by a variable. So in our previous expression, we had 12r, which is actually 12 times r. And so what we have here is we have a coefficient of 12, which is a number, and it's right beside the variable of r. So 12 is the coefficient. Now, another thing that you need to think about is together, when you have 12 and r, it is a term, but it also creates a product. We don't know what that product would be, but we know that if we multiply 12 by some amount, both of these are factors, and they will give us a product. So in this product, both 12 and r are factors. The coefficient would be 12. Now let's take a look at a table. Whoops. All right, this table shows other ways to describe, read, and write expressions. Sometimes you can view one or more parts of an expression as a single entity. Now, this little bubble helps us understand what they're talking about. Terms are grouped inside parentheses. Terms grouped inside parentheses can also be viewed as a single part of the expression. If you look over here, you'll see that we have that type of situation. We have 7 plus 11. So that tells us we have a single part. Hi, Mr. T! Wow, look who came to visit. It's Kirsten. Kirsten, do you want to help us? Oh, yeah, I would really like that. Well, you did a great job yesterday at the band competition, just like Brenna, so let's give it a try. Nearpod number 3. How could or how would you describe the expressions? So in other words, kids, how would you describe this expression right here? Describe it using your Nearpod. I will pause the video. Okay, let's take a look at the answer. Kirsten, jump up and pull it down for us. Whoop! Oh, wiggled loose, and there we go. In this situation, the expression has two factors. One factor is 4, and the other is the sum of 7 and 11. As a word phrase, it would be 4 times the sum, 7 plus 11. So that's how you would read that. 4 times the sum, 7 plus 11. So you'd add 7 and 11 first, and then you'd multiply it by 4. Wow, this is really a lot of fun. Okay, let's go to the next screen. What is an equation? Well, in this situation, kids, what we're going to do is I'm going to take what is in the book and I'm going to elaborate on it. An equation says that two things are equal. It will have an equal sign like this. So what's really important to remember is that when you talk about an equation, you're talking about variables, operations, and amounts, but the key is you will have an equal sign that balances or equals both sides, okay? So in this situation, the equation says that is what is on the left side is equal to what is on the right side. And that's an important thing to remember, that whatever happens over here has to give the same amount to what happens over there. So an equation is a statement, this equals that. So when you see an equation, you know that this equals that. And anything that you do over here should come out the same as what you have over here. Now, another thing that we might want to talk about that's not in our book would be the parts of an equation. So people can talk about equations. There are names for different parts, which makes it better than saying that thingy there. Here we have an equation that says 4x minus 7 equals 5. And all the parts in this equation are listed below. You can see that we have a coefficient, which in this case, the coefficient is going to be the number 4 multiplying some amount x. And then over here, we have two constants, which are 7 and 5. Now, a constant, okay, a number on its own is called a constant. And then, of course, we have our coefficient, which is 4. And it gives us another definition that a coefficient is a number used to multiply a variable. Okay, so now we have a couple new words here. We have operator and we have constant. And don't forget that a constant is a number on its own by itself. Now in this slide, when we take a look at it, sometimes a letter stands for a number. In other words, you might experience an expression that has very few or no numbers at all in it. In this case, x is considered the variable, a and b are considered coefficients, and c is a constant. So when you look at this, you know that x is your variable and that a and b are coefficients to x. And c is considered a constant because it's going to be a number on its own. Now, an operator is a symbol such as addition, multiplication, division that represents an operation, something you want to do with the values. So here we go. We have kind of a big picture of everything that we've talked about. We have an entire equation, 4 times x minus 7 equals 5. And then we have it broken down to show that part of it on this side of the equal sign is an expression. And then on this side, we have an amount, another term. Okay? So an expression is a group of terms separated by plus or minus signs. So in this case, we have plus or minus signs separating the terms, and we can see that we have 3 terms. So now we can say things like, that expression has only 2 terms, or the second term is a constant, or even, are you sure the coefficient is really 4? So in this case, you could actually figure out if this coefficient should be 4 or not be 4, because what's over here should equal what's over there. Okay, now we should be at Nearpod activity number 5, question number 5. Oh, I'd like to read it, Mr. Triola. Can I help too? Hey, Elise, you were at the band competition yesterday also. Of course you can help us out. You worked hard yesterday. Okay, everybody, tell how many terms are in each expression. So let's do number 5. I will pause the video. Okay, here we go. In this expression, we have a total of 1 term. And the reason we have 1 term is simple, because you know what? We don't have any addition in here. We have 22 times x divided by 3 times y. So in other words, if we set this up, it would be 22 times x divided by 3 times y. We certainly would have parentheses here separating the two multiplication steps. So the order we would do this would we would do 2 times x, and then we do 3 times y, and then we would divide. So that's why we only have one term. There's no addition or subtraction. Wow, that's really amazing! It certainly is, isn't it, Elise? Let's take a look at this one up here. How many terms are in this expression? I'll pause the video. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look at this one. We have 2 terms in this situation, and we know that we have 2 terms because we can see we have an addition symbol right here. So A divided by B is one term, and C divided by D is another term. And then we would add those 2 quotients together. So that's why we have one term and 2 terms. So the key to finding terms is looking for either an addition symbol or a subtraction symbol. What do you say, Elise? Shall we go on to the next slide? Yeah, I'll help. Okay, here we go, kids. Describe the expression. I will pause the video for us. Now, when you look at this expression, what you'll notice is that we have 25. I'm going to write out the whole expression. We have 25 next to b plus 4. Okay, so when we look at this, the first thing we want to do is always look at our expression, and we see that we have the operation of multiplication because we have 25 next to parentheses, and we have addition. So that tells us that we've got some terms going on here, and we also have some multiplication going on here. So the best way you could have described this was this expression has 2 terms. One factor is 25. There's one factor, and the other is the sum of b plus 4. So in other words, it has 2 terms. It has this term created within parentheses and this term out here. It has 2 terms. One factor is 25 and the other is the sum of b plus 4. All right, let's take a look at this one right here. In this case, use the table for 7, 8, and it looks like these 2 right here as well. Inez is buying office supplies for her company. She buys B boxes of black ink cartridges and C boxes of colored ink cartridges. Write an expression for the total number of ink cartridges Inez buys. So over here's the table. See if you can write an expression for this situation. I'll pause the video. Okay, here we go. And here is our expression. It would be 8 times B plus 6 times C. In other words, we know how many black ink cartridges we are getting. Okay, we're getting 8 of them, and we know how many colored cartridges we are getting. And we wrote an expression for the total number of ink cartridges altogether. Okay, so we have that going for us right there. Over here it says write an expression for the total cost of cartridges Inez buys. I'll pause the video. Okay, here we go. Write an expression for the total cost of cartridges, and it would be this. 130 times B plus 115 times C. In other words, they're talking about the total cost here, which is this right here, We don't know how many she's going to buy, but we do know how much it costs. So the cost is represented here, 130. How many are going to be purchased are represented with the variable B. And over here, we know the cost of the colored cartridges, but we don't know how many are going to be purchased. But we do know that once we figure out how many we were buying and multiply for both, we add those together to get a total cost. All right, let's try this one. Describe this expression, n minus 4. I'll pause the video. All right, let's take a look at it. The mathematicians say this expression is the difference n minus 4. Or most kids would say this is n take away 4, or 4 less than n. There's a number of ways that you could describe it. All right, number 12. Which expression shows the sum of two products? Well, look carefully at each of these and decide if you're going to get the sum of two products. In other words, you have multiplication twice, and then you're adding what you have. So look for a place where you have multiplication twice and then addition in there. Okay, the answer is letter C. And you can see we have multiplication, we have a coefficient and a variable, coefficient and a variable, and we're going to multiply, and then add to get a sum. You'd have division here, so you knew that wasn't right. And then over here we have two addition processes multiplied together. And then over here you have multiplication 2 times j times k. But there's no addition in there. So that's why C would be the one you want. All right, here we go. Hey, Mr. Triola. Whoops. Hey, Mr. Triola. This is a lot of fun. It really is, isn't it? Let's finish up the video right now. Yay! This is fun. Okay, let's go. See if you can solve this. Identify the coefficient of the variable. Then identify the factors. So what we want to do is find the coefficient of the variable and then identify the factors that you'll be working with. I'll pause the video. All right, here we go. If you look at it, we have 37 times n. So what we know is 37 is the coefficient of the variable n, and the two factors are 37 and n. So in other words, we have 37, which is right next to n, which makes it the coefficient, and then you would multiply those together, which makes both of them factors. Let's take a look at this next one. What is the coefficient of the variable, and what are the two factors? I'll pause the video. All right, here we go. Here's our answer. Well, in this case, just like the other one, we have 8 5/10 as the coefficient because it's right next to W. And then we have our two factors, which of course would be 8 5/10 and W. Wow, that's a lot of math. It sure is, girls, but we can do it. All right, let's go on and get started on our homework. Thanks for helping out, kids. You bet.